Learning is not just about working hard. Learning is an engineering problem. In the last episode, we talked about cognitive load theory, the hardware rules of the brain, and how to manage the flow of information going into working memory. But once we understand the hardware, another question remains. What is the best way to actually process scattered information and turn it into long-term schemas? Today's thinking tool represents the current scientific understanding of how learning should work. It is called the ICAP framework. Once you understand it, you will realize that most people's so-called effort is actually very inefficient pseudo-learning. And you will see what real practice looks like. The ICAP framework was first proposed in 2009 by cognitive scientist Michaeline Chi at Arizona State University, and later refined into its current form by Chi and Ruth Wiley in 2014. Today, it is one of the strongest standards in education and cognitive science for judging whether a learner is truly engaging their mind. Learning happens inside the brain. It is a microscopic neural process. But because we cannot directly observe what is happening inside someone's head, Chi's approach was brilliantly practical. Observe what learners actually do on the outside, classify those behaviors carefully, and infer how deeply they are thinking from that. ICAP stands for 4 kinds of learning activity: interactive, constructive, active, passive. Or in order from lowest to highest. P, A, C, I. Here is the basic meaning of each one. P, passive. The learner receives information, but does not do anything observable beyond facing the material. A, active. The learner does something with the material, but only manipulates it without generating new information. C, constructive. The learner produces new information that was not explicitly in the original material. I, interactive. The learner engages in a real two-way exchange of ideas with another person. For example, if you watch a teaching video. Passive means you simply watch it from beginning to end and feel like you understood it. Active means you watch it while taking notes, underlining key points, maybe pausing and rewinding. Constructive means that after watching, you explain the material in your own words and maybe create a few application scenarios. Interactive means you discuss it with someone else, ask questions, answer questions, challenge each other, and refine your understanding through real back-and-forth dialogue. Across many studies, the result is very clear. I greater than C greater than A greater than P. Not busier is better. Not louder is better. Not more exciting is better. What matters is whether learning generates new information, and whether that information gets feedback and correction. Let's unpack the 4 levels one by one. Passive learning means the learner receives information without any visible physical action or deep information processing. In plain language, listening quietly, reading text, or watching video. Students sit there and listen carefully. Parents and managers think, that sounds like good learning. But passive learning has very low long-term retention. Cognitive psychology has a classic idea called levels of processing. Memory strength depends less on how many times information enters the brain, and more on how deeply the brain processes that information. If you only receive information passively and never process it, it passes through the brain like water through sand. Almost nothing remains. That said, passive learning is not useless. When you encounter a new topic for the first time, you need to get a rough sense of it before doing anything else. Passive learning is the fastest way to receive information. That is why, in our previous discussion of cognitive load theory, we said that new material often needs direct instruction. The teacher gives the explanation directly, because otherwise the cognitive load is too high. For adults, listening to podcasts, watching documentaries, or hearing lectures on platforms like Get is mostly passive learning. In a busy life, it is the easiest way to learn something. But never confuse ease of exposure with actual learning. Active learning is one level higher. The learner is still receiving information, but now there is a physical action, or direct manipulation of the material. Reading aloud, copying notes, pausing the video, dragging slides, highlighting with colorful pens. All of these count as active learning. You are doing something. Your attention is more focused. You have a handle on the material. So the learning effect is better than passive learning. But you are still not generating anything genuinely new. You may achieve shallow understanding. You may remember the material better. But you are still mostly repeating, not transforming. Teachers often praise students who have neatly organized notes, brightly highlighted textbooks, and a serious attitude toward repetition. That attitude looks disciplined. But often it is a warning sign. It can lead to mediocrity. If you memorize a passage over and over again, it starts to feel smooth and familiar. That smoothness creates an illusion of competence. You think you have mastered the material. In reality, you have only become familiar with the sequence of words. You have not yet grasped the knowledge behind them. The real turning point is C, constructive learning. This is the point where you begin to cross from average performance into genuine mastery. Constructive learning means the learner generates new knowledge or a new mental representation that goes beyond the original material. You summarize the main idea in your own words. You draw a mind map. You ask yourself questions and answer them. When you read worked examples, you mentally fill in the causal chain that the book did not spell out. You do practice problems, trying to apply the idea flexibly. She argues that the key mechanism here is self-explaining. You explain a concept entirely in your own words. That forces the brain to pull relevant schemas from long-term memory and stitch them together with the new information. It is like building walls on top of an existing foundation. Constructive learning is especially powerful for subjects like math, physics, programming, law, and academic reading. Anything where you need to know why, not just what. It is also ideal for exam preparation, because exams rarely ask whether you have seen something before. They ask whether you can transfer it. In my view, real learning begins at C. People who can study independently, who truly understand things, and who can stand on their own in the workplace are almost always strong constructive learners. Learning is not about pouring knowledge into the brain. It is about building new schemas on top of the schemas you already have. The highest level is I, interactive learning. This requires at least two learners working around the same idea in a real, meaningful exchange. This is not just taking turns speaking at the same table. There must be actual back and forth. Someone adds. Someone questions. Someone corrects. Someone clarifies. Someone pushes back. Someone asks a better question. Someone moves the discussion forward. Real interaction is like intellectual ping pong. I say something. You point out the flaw and suggest a correction. Then I build on your idea and refine the theory further. Interactive learning is especially common in research-like settings. It is usually not about basic textbook material. It is more suited to difficult concepts, open-ended questions, case analysis, and debate. Graduate students discussing a theory with their advisor. Engineers reviewing a design together. Junior managers trying to understand what senior leadership really wants. This kind of interaction does more than help you construct understanding. It also tests whether your construction can survive challenge. It prevents self-congratulation. You have to actively search for weak points. You have to use your best intelligence to persuade someone else. As the old saying goes, as a jade is polished by friction, so ideas are refined through debate. Interactive learning may be the highest intellectual activity most people ever experience. Once you measure reality with the ICAP framework, you realize how inefficient a lot of learning activities really are. Students staring at a blackboard for 45 minutes are doing pure P. Even taking notes only gets you to A. Parents sitting beside a child and explaining the answer directly when the child gets stuck may still be only P. A company meeting where the boss speaks at length, the slides are beautiful, and everyone sits upright nodding politely is not necessarily A. High-level learning is not about ceremony. It is about C and I. Teachers should ask more questions. Students should ask for clarification. Parents should encourage interaction. Companies should do project postmortems, red team and blue team exercises, and even serious debate. From my reading of the research, in primary and secondary classrooms, roughly 2/3 to 3/4 of classroom activity is still P and A. Only about 1/4 to 1/3 reaches C and I. In some classrooms, half of the teachers barely give students any chance for C or I at all. University classrooms can be even worse. One study of 170 German university lectures found that in an 80-minute class, the time distribution was roughly 41.5 minutes of P, 12.5 minutes of A, 3.3 minutes of C, and 4.5 minutes of I. That means lecture-based teaching is often a very inefficient way to learn. The best learners mostly rely on self-study, individual practice, and private discussion. We should not blame schools and teachers too harshly. They have many constraints. A classroom with many students is easiest to manage through lecture. And of course, teachers are limited too. But in the age of AI, education could be radically redesigned. I strongly hope entrepreneurs will build AI learning systems based on cognitive load theory and the ICAP framework. These systems should customize learning pace and tasks for each student, like a tutoring team educating the crown prince. So in the end, P is listening to scripture. A is copying scripture. C is realizing it yourself. I is debating the truth. The ICAP framework tells us that the most efficient learning is neither the easiest nor the hardest. It asks a better question. Have you pushed cognitive engagement as high as possible, given your current conditions? That is where real learning begins. That's it for today's content. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.